Hello, welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Interesting week this week for things. We've had a big conference in the US, Power Platform Conference. It's not a Microsoft conference, that one, but there were lots of Microsoft folk there. It was kind of the closest we got to a Microsoft in-person conference this year, I think. So that was good. Lots of things kind of come out of that, but not really. It's an interesting one, the Microsoft Power Platform Conference, because none of it was available online. It was all in person. So as far as I'm aware, unless it shows, there was definitely kind of nothing streamed. Maybe the sessions were recorded and will come out later. I haven't seen anything to that effect, so I don't know. But it has kind of brought about a couple of announcements that I'm going to go through in a minute. But in general terms, we are in that kind of runway up to Ignite at the moment where things will get held back a little bit. But also, not only, it's kind of a weird thing, right? So announcements get held back for things like Ignite. So in that respect, it goes quiet. But also product groups rush to try and get their feature into GA because they want to announce it at Ignite, they want to talk about it, so they either want to launch it into preview or GA. So actually some stuff does come in the run up to Ignite and does get pushed out and published. So it's both a quiet and a busy time, depending on kind of what you're looking at. So let's go through the things that I think are worth knowing about this week. The first of those, so during last week, I put together a video all about using the Virtual Appointments API. Now, I haven't sort of spoke that much about the Virtual Appointments API. It's fairly new. It's in public preview right now. It's one of those things that you might expect it to go GA, kind of going to Ignite, but maybe not. Don't know. But anyway, right now it's in public preview. That means that you can use it today to try it out. It's really simple to explain and really nice and easy to use. Basically, it takes your existing Microsoft Teams meeting and it just makes it so that somebody from outside who isn't using Teams can have a great join experience on the web, in their browser, in iPad or whatever, without you needing to do any work in the way that you would normally with something like ACS. You'd have to go and build a client, build a join experience. This does all that for you. It's a completely default experience. So this is the video. I'll put a link to the video. I'm going to do a blog post later today. So you can, if you see the blog post, you can go watch the video from there. But if you're listening to this first and you just want to go to it before, I'll put a link to the unlisted YouTube video because the video is ready to go. I just haven't done the blog post for it yet. So you can see there's a load of stuff I've talked about, like who's it for, how does it work, how do you use it. And then I also go through some demo on exactly how you use it as well and what that experience looks like. You can kind of see a couple of jumps. If I jump through a little bit, you can kind of see what that experience looks like for users. They get their own lobby as well. Right now, you can't customize this lobby. It's kind of just as it is. That's one of the things I talk about as potentially a future feature. Maybe that's something that there is a blog post actually. I reference it in the video and show in the video. There's a blog post where they announced the public preview and they talked about things like being able to customize the lobby to make it industry specific. I think that would be really, really smart. It isn't there right now in the public preview. So again, that might be one of those things that we see coming into GA. Don't know, we'll just have to wait and see for that and see what's going on. But if you want to play with the Virtual Appointments API, go for it. That hopefully the video will be useful. I think the Virtual Appointments API is one of those things that eventually every Microsoft Teams meeting is going to have this functionality. What I mean is you won't need to go and call an API just to get a nice WebJoin, customizable WebJoin experience that doesn't need Teams. I think it will just somehow be enabled by default and users can just use it. And it will be somehow built into the Teams API as a feature because it feels so naturally like it should be there. We'll wait and see. All right. Something else. So there's a new program for people who want to learn the Microsoft Power Platform, but who aren't developers, aren't in technology, don't really know where to get started. What we would call citizen developers. And Microsoft is pitching at those people to say, why not have a change of career? Why not take everything you know about your industry and become a Power Platform developer? So they have a Power Up program, which is at powerup.microsoft.com. And it's all about helping you learn to use no-code technologies, and all done using the Microsoft Power Platform. Interesting. So it's a program of free content that you can use to learn how the Power Platform works. It's aimed at non-technical people doing other roles. I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's good. I think content learning is always good. There's no downside to that particularly. Microsoft, I think, are trying to solve that chicken and egg problem. I guess also this maybe tells us that there aren't enough people. Microsoft think there could be more people going to the Power Platform from outside of development, and so they're trying to move that needle a little bit by doing things like this Power Up program. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. Like, I think it's interesting. I worry. Worry is the wrong word. I think if you're going to do this, you need to keep half a foot in the industry you're currently in, because there's a huge value to the insights that you can bring from within that industry. It's no good you forgetting everything you know about HR, let's say, and becoming excellent at the Power Platform, because then you don't know what to do, because you've forgotten all the HR stuff and you don't know how to help HR people be better at HR using the Power Platform. You need to stay in the HR world and take this on additionally, because that's where the secret sauce is, I think. Knowing enough about HR or whatever the industry is to know where to add the value, and then knowing just about enough about the Power Platform to be able to deliver that value without necessarily needing code. If you can do that, I think that will be a good thing to do, and where something like the Power Platform could come in for you. And if that's true, there's an application process. It's a 3-month program, so you have to apply to join it. It's a 3-month program. Learning some, and then there's a certification at the end. You have to commit to 8 to 10 hours of learning every week for 3 months. And they do have apparently there's a shorter program, or there may be a shorter program. They want to know if that's too long for you and you would like a shorter program. So yeah, interesting. If you've got 8 to 10 hours a week for 3 months, give it a go. Let me know how it goes. Okay, I want to jump sideways slightly. There's no big kind of techie tech dev announcements for like new features or anything like that, particularly. What I do want to talk about is an interview that Mary Jo Foley did just before the Power Platform conference, which I think was really interesting. And yeah, so she spoke with Jeff Teeper, who's CVP, or he's president, I think, of the Collaborative Apps and Platform, and Charles Lamara, who's the CVP of Business Apps and Platform. And it's kind of interesting to see the kind of things. These interviews are always interesting because if Microsoft agree at that level, like the CVP level, if they agree to sit down with someone like Mary Jo Foley to do an interview, then you know that they've got something to say. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So it's interesting to kind of see what they did say. And it's interesting to see what Mary Jo is able to get out of them. I think this is a good write-up, actually, of, what they wanted to say, the stuff they wanted to get across, and how all this stuff comes together. So let me just share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at. So this is Mary Jo's write-up. It's very comprehensive. It's a big blog post. Some of this is not new. Some of it is new. What's interesting is this idea of collaborative apps. So I would read up on this just to understand, what collaborative apps are. So when you start hearing people talk about collaborative apps, you kind of understand where they fit in the whole, what are collaborative apps? Are they no-code apps? Are they low-code apps? Are they apps with adaptive cards? I think yes is yes. Do they show up in Graph? Yes. Do they show up in Teams? I think so. Apparently Dynamics is another surface where you're going to start seeing some of these things showing up. And I think they're going all in on the Power Platform as the development surface for Office, which if you're a long-term Office add-ins developer, this is interesting. I think it's got some questions for like the pro code community around Office and Microsoft 365. So I think that will be interesting to watch as well. So yeah, interesting. Like this is a very heavily slanted towards Power Platform because Charles Lamara was there. It's just going into the Power Platform conference, so it's hard to know whether these are the things that they thought the Power Platform community wanted to hear, and whether there's a similar message around Pro Code to be like, don't worry, we're still investing in Pro Code, we've still got all these other plans, blah 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 blah. Whatever that looks like, which I think that would be smart. I think there's a huge runway and enthusiasm about Teams apps right now, and how Teams apps can go sideways and become Office apps. And we're seeing that with Outlook at the moment. I think I would, if I was, in a CVP position at Microsoft, I would push them around Microsoft 365 a lot more and make that the kind of surface of choice for pro developers. But I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, so a really interesting blog post to read up on, actually, just to kind of get a feel for what Microsoft are thinking. Mary Jo calls it the Microsoft's grand vision for building the next generation of apps, which is kind of really interesting because I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Grand vision feels like it's all worked out, and sometimes like it can feel not always like that. But that we are outside of the Microsoft bubble, right? So inside Microsoft, they know exactly where they're going. I think they've got the vision, they've got their North Star. They know the process, and so they're working towards it. But from the outside, it can often you have to wait until all the puzzles fall and all the pennies drop, before like you can kind of see that stuff. So this is an interesting insight into that. This is kind of Microsoft peeling back the curtain a little bit and saying, look, here's the vision. This is where we're aiming at, and this is why we're doing some of the things we're doing. So definitely worth a read for that. Oh my goodness, I've gone so long. I was supposed to keep this under 10 minutes because it makes it easier to put it on LinkedIn. But I've completely failed to do that, haven't I? Never mind. All right, let's talk about the last thing then before I take any more of your time up. And that is announcing the general availability of Viva Sales. Now, I wasn't going to put this in other than because the only reason I am putting this in is because last week or the week before, I did a blog post about Viva Sales, just kind of covering everything we already knew to this point. And yeah, just kind of covering the developer angle as well, and what the API surfaces might look like, things like costing and the rest of it. So we've now got a bit more information about the GA of Viva Sales. It's going to be happening on October the 3rd. We have no more information about APIs. When they're talking about where it works in customer choice in CRM, that is sort of true as long as your CRM of choice is Dynamics 365 or Salesforce. If it's not one of those, then you don't get any customer choice, I'm afraid, unless there's stuff that they haven't yet talked about around APIs. So when they went into preview, they did talk about APIs to allow developers to add extra CRMs into the mix. That isn't in this blog post, but I mean, that's quite a technical thing, so it may well not be in this blog post. The other thing we haven't looked at is Dataverse APIs as a way of accessing some of this data in Viva Sales. So it's not definitely a no, but it's not definitely a yes either. And then the other interesting thing we got out of this blog post was pricing. So pricing is $40 per user per license when it goes GA on October the 3rd. That's only true if you're using Salesforce though. If you're using Dynamics 365 Sales, Enterprise and Premium, it's free. I guess if you're using Dynamics 365 Sales that's not Enterprise and Premium, you still have to pay. If you're using Salesforce, you have to pay. It is not part of the Viva Suite. So if you're already paying for the Viva Suite, you have to pay extra for Viva Sales per user. And then there's some links at the bottom for getting started. So if you are into Viva Sales, then that is some useful information, hopefully, for you. If you're a developer looking about how you can get into Viva Sales and integrate with CRMs, still don't have any information for you right now, I'm afraid. But as soon as I find something, I will let you know. And I think that is going to be everything for me. A little bit long this week, but there we go. Some interesting things to talk about. Some interesting things coming up as well, I think. So make sure you subscribe. There's the button for subscribe. And yeah, that way you can kind of keep up with what's going on. Like I say, I'll publish that video later today. And whatever else it is you're doing this week, have a great one. And I will see you again next time.